This week's episode is brought to you by Humango, Super League Triathlon's official AI coaching partner. Humango is a unique training platform that will improve athletic motivation and performance because it understands how we train and why we train. Hugo, their AI assistant, understands your goals and changing commitments to continuously build an adaptive training plan with regular guidance for athletes of all levels. Hello and welcome to a very special Chute Show where we're coming to you from many different countries just at the moment, from the UK, from Poland and from here in Munich where we're getting ready for the second round of the Championship Series. And joining me for this one to talk about everything that happened in London and what is going to happen in Munich is the Scorpions team manager and my co-commentator Chris McCormack, who's branded up as always in his gear. The Eagles team manager who has a little bit of work to do and is in an unfamiliar position of having to chase coming into Munich. Tim Don is here, and one of my co-commentators and the woman on the black carpet, Vicky Holland, joins us as well. And we're going to start, guys, with the women's. Let's go back and have a debrief of what happened in London and what we think that means then for Munich and moving forward. So it was, Macca, I've got to start with you on this one, first of all, because your Scorpions were dominant from the beginning, soaking up all the short shoots. There was some real tactics involved there. Were you happy with how your Scorpions team went? You ended up first and third as well.
Look, I think when we start opening with the women, you could see by the team selection, the great draft selection by myself to pull in both Cassandre and Georgia Taylor-Brown into the team. We're going to have big assets. And with Emma Jeffcoat, who was our biggest point scorer over the weekend, it was just a great opening round. We knew the men were going to be difficult with the loss of Vincent, but we learn a lot from Tim. I know we said that in the last Chute Show. I think last year, Tim understanding the breakdown of the points across the single disciplines. And I think more than that, having those team meetings prior to an event and having the athletes understand what they need to do. Because, you get in racing mode on race day and you don't think of, we're so used to racing as individuals where chasing, moving past one individual in the swim can be so beneficial to the points. So that was sort of the instructions we gave going into that race, was like, let's accumulate points where we can, be aggressive in the swim, go after those bite points and run points. And overall, that's sort of where we did make up a lot of our point scoring in those individual disciplines, especially on the swim and Emma getting a lot on the bike, going after that fastest bike split.
Yeah, was she instructed to do that? Because she picked up second in the swim. She's a fantastic swimmer, but She hung back on the bike, and I spoke to her this morning. We actually went for a swim together, which, can I say, is not a good thing to do if you're nearly 40.
I'm impressed, Will.
Together or in the same pool at the same time?
Oh, I was on her feet for a little while.
Off the dive.
I had to delay the recording 15 minutes because I still had pool water dripping out my nose. Feel a little bit like a drowned rat, but was that a directive from you? Because Emma said, it was so easy to get the fastest bike split. Like no one else was even thinking about it too much. And I just sat myself in the right spot and made sure I did the fastest lap. And as you said, 18 points added to your total of 100, Macca.
Yeah, that was a conversation we had in the team meeting the day prior. I think we all agreed that Cassandre and GTB would be our general classification athletes looking to go after the wins at the pointy end. To Emma's credit, she said she's had a rough run coming into this. She had to go back to Australia, and her preparation hasn't been superb. So she said, look, I'm in great swimming form. Why don't I go after some points on the individual basis? And if I'm in the hunt to get some additional points, let's do that. And so I think that whole dynamic worked for us. So she was instructed to be really aggressive in that opening swim, to try and chase a short shoot and potentially get those points where we could, and hang back and go after a bike time, which she did do. And then we're able to allocate that short shoot off to Kathia Shea, who moved past 3 or 4 athletes to move herself into, I think she got 10th or 10th place, which was fantastic. So she was sitting in 13th, 14th place. So the short shoot for us this year was I love the managers being able to allocate those short shoots, because it comes down to thinking on your feet and trying to make sure you can get those maximum points. And it didn't disrupt the front of the race, which was lovely to see.
Tim Don, how do you feel your Eagles went? You had some pretty bad luck in the women's, but outside of that, I know that you had a big meeting with both the women's and the men's separately, and took them through every single part of the day's racing. With the women's, you had some bad luck, which set you off on the wrong foot.
Yeah, we started out well, and I think Macca hit the nail on the head. You know, you find these gems of athletes who commit to the team, and last year we had Vittoria Lopez, and this year definitely Macca and the Bahrain victorious have got Emma Jeffcoat. I mean, Sian Rainsley for the whole of that swim was sat there beautifully in second, and I was getting excited. And then Emma just went round her with like 6 or 7 meters. She's got a racing hat on, and she knew track position and points are important. We started out well. We had, I think we had 3 in the lead group. And then unfortunately on the first corner, there was a Sian fell off. And then later in the race, Non-Stanford's helmet, her buckle came off her strap. So by the time she fixed it or tried to fix it, the 90 seconds had elapsed. So she was out the race as well. And then we have a young athlete with Sarah Roll, who, you know, she was always going to be on the back foot racing this kind of racing, but, you know, she really dug in and she hung in there for longer than she thought she could. So I think she'll grow throughout the series. Is she going to get any points? I don't think so. But as an athlete, it's really important to have someone like that in your team, you know, to learn. But yeah, no, we struggled in the women's, but, you know, we only got 1 point scorer. So, you know, looking at the overall team points on the women's side, you know, if none finishes and so does Sian doesn't crash, we're going to jump up. You know, we're going to grab a handful of points because they're top 10, top 12, top 10 women, you know, contenders. But it was a shock to them. It was. You know, I've been messaging them this week, and Sian's injuries are okay. You know, she had a nice bike ride, and mid bike ride yesterday, she jumped in a lake with some of the Eagle men. So I don't know. They're definitely enjoying themselves in Munich. But it was tough. But take nothing away from the Scorpions. They learned from the best. What can I say?
Yeah, there's some big gaps there already. So, and long may it continue, I suppose. From Macca's point of view, Vicky, you were in the commentary box. How did you see the women's play out? I mean, what I really noticed, and one of the biggest things we took away, I mean, on two sides of the coin, is that Taylor Spivey is a genuine contender. And to be fair, with Cassandre Beugrande not racing in Malibu, she's effectively the clubhouse leader at this point, having taken second ahead of Georgia Taylor-Brown. And the other thing is that Beth Potter seems to be off the pace. So there's 2 things that I think we should probably discuss. Vicky, what's your point of view on how the women's race played out?
Yeah, first off, we should address Taylor because she was fantastic. I think we've known for a long time Taylor's got fantastic, consistent results over a really long period of time, but she's not stepped up to that really top level in a little while now. She's had, I think she said herself after the race, she's had quite a lot of 4th and 5th in the last year or so. But this race, she did so many things well, and especially those transitions. In Super League, transition is a whole discipline of its own. If you mess that up, you really are on the back foot. And every single time she got herself to the front of the transition zone, especially the 2 times they had to rack their bike and run down to the swim, she was always there first, had a hat and goggles on first. She was just really swift at doing that. And that put her in like an amazing position for the whole race. So she really just delivered super, super well across swim, bike, run and transitions, put herself in that second place on the day. And then you come to Beth Potter, and I'd say what Beth really messed up was just swim 1. And that shows how much that can impact a day as well. She didn't have a great swim 1. She was pretty solid, really, across the board the rest of the day. But she lost so much time because their pack was 15 seconds behind when they came off the bike in round 1. And that was it then. That gap kind of stayed pretty similar for the rest of the day. So again, it just shows that one really off discipline can really affect you. Don't say that to Matty Hauser, because obviously he bucked the trend massively when we come back and talk about the men, I'm sure. But yeah, I think what Beth did was just have a bit of a rusty start. And from there on in, she was good, but it was almost too late.
Yeah, she ended up 70 seconds back. So I guess once the elastic band starts to stretch, it can snap and you can still find yourself way back as the pressure goes on at the front. Macca, your thoughts on those 2 as well? Because, I mean, I really like what Taylor brings. I think she's going to excel when we get to Malibu, especially if there's a bit of surf there. But, you know, she could be a real contender for this one, and she seems to be racing with some freedom that we haven't seen for a while.
And she's going to be very, very comfortable going home to Malibu. She grew up on those beaches. She is an open water beach swimmer. She's a lifeguard. So she felt very, very comfortable there. She actually said that in the conversation I had with her at breakfast. She's excited about Munich this weekend, she's going to really bounce off that London result. I think she surprised herself. She went in very, very focused. You saw that, as you said, Vicky, in the way she marched through transition, the way she positioned herself, where she got off the bike. She put herself always at the front of those groups, never drifted too back, always thinking of the next discipline, which is what you need to do in Super League, right? Especially this week coming to Munich, where we have an enduro format. The next discipline, planning that while you're in the last one, is going to be critical. So I think she's the form athlete. I think she took a lot of people by surprise, and I think she's also that type of athlete that's going to build like a snowball off this. I saw her walking around after the race. She was like, you know what, I've got a chance of winning this series this year, and I'm in the form to do it. And with Cassandre stepping out, as you said, for Malibu, it opens it right up for a GTB and Taylor Spivey sort of showdown with Beth Potter coming back in the mix, because I'm not going to turn my back on Beth. I do agree with Vicky. She had a really, really rough opening stage, and she played chasings for the rest of the day. She was isolated with that pursuit start at the end, so she didn't have anyone to work with. And little things like that can change an entire race for an athlete. So, bring on the enduro format for Beth. I think she's going to be a lot closer to the pointy end this weekend.
Yeah,
she's still in fifth. So let's not count her out. She's still near the top of those rankings, and we're talking about
to get past Sophie Caldwell. I mean, Sophie at the moment isn't going to Malibu, but I think with the form she's in, knowing Cassandre's not going, is she going to change her mind? I wonder if the Cheetah fans can persuade her to go to Malibu.
Do they get a choice?
I would
they
go.
Vote.
I would go if I was her. And she's got a chance of getting on a podium in the Super League.
Tim's trying to change the subject because he doesn't want me to ask him about Taylor Spivey because Tim let her go in the draft.
Thanks for reminding. Hey, listen, I think Taylor executed perfectly. I mean, as Vicky said, transitions are everything here. And it's not just the transition. It's we're talking a bike to run. It's the last 100 meters of the bike. She is not complacent. She's putting herself. And even when you've done your transition and jumped on the bike, she's attacking straight away. She's not looking back. In that last race, I thought she might have waited for Cassandre. But of the 4 laps, she led 3 off the front, and they had to work hard to catch her. She's dangerous. And I did let her go. You're right. It was a tough decision. Whether to keep her on as the only Eagle that is racing this year from last year, or do I go for a whole fresh team? I still stand by my decision. Listen, Taylor's a real talent, but you've got to go on form. And I picked non-Stanford, from the European Champs performance and from her team relay performance, which was really, really important. But it's not going to be the Georgia Taylor Brown show this year. She's going to have her work cut out to win the series.
Oh dear. Maybe there's going to be
I've got some rhino dung stuck down my throat.
Virus is running rampant through the Eagles team at Munich. We'll see. But I think you're right when you say it's not going to be the Georgia Taylor Brown show. Did she perform unders? Did she? I mean, she said she felt sluggish coming down from altitude, and maybe that is her version of sluggish, still finishing on the podium, but she didn't have that same that run that she has. Looked a little heavier than maybe it could have before. Macca, what do you think? Being her, like, what did she say afterwards?
That was exactly what she said. She said, "Look, I've just come down from altitude. I felt fantastic in stage 1. And then it just sort of felt lethargic as the racing went on." I said, "Geez, you're a great poker player because you didn't look as lethargic." She said, "Yeah, it was just that little bit. I just felt off." And I think she's very, very happy where she's at. I think there was a lot for her to take away as she's learning this altitude thing. I think she's going to come stronger. I've been in that same position. I think we all have who have trained up at altitude. When you come down, you just feel, blah. You just don't have that punch, but it seems to come back around after 8 or 9 days when you come back down. So I expect more from her in Munich, and I do think she's going to build through the series. We saw that last year, and we'll see it again this year.
Who does an enduro suit? I just look back at the last enduro we had was in Jersey last year, where Jess Learmont smashed everyone. Georgia Taylor Brown finished second, about 30 seconds ahead of Cassandre Beugrande. Beth Potter was 5th. Taylor Spivey 8th. In fact, I think there was a Holland in there in 4th in Jersey. I mean, who does this suit out of our current field? Bix, I'll ask you because you're the one who races this one.
I think, as we said with Beth, going back to what happened to her in this race this weekend in London, round one swim is almost more important than ever, because there's no stop, there's no time to reset. So you have to be up there at the beginning. If you're not up there at the beginning, you can just find that elastic gets pinged and pinged and pinged, and you get yourself timed out on the 90-second rule. So swimming well on round one and making a bike pack is super important. There's absolutely no time to let up, or you will get timed out of the race. So the top swimmers are loving an enduro format, and the ones who perhaps didn't have the swim they would like to have had in London, your likes of Non Stanford, who said her swim number one she just really struggled with, Beth, who didn't have a great swim one. Those girls have really got to pick it up this time, otherwise they're never going to get in the race again. But someone like a Georgia always swims pretty solidly. Emma Jeffcoat, we saw her swim fantastically. Cassandre Beugrande led out the swim. Taylor Spivey right up there. Sian Rainsley hopefully won't get taken out by a scorpion, I think it may have been, on corner one.
Unbelievable.
I mean, I'm not throwing anyone under a bus here, but I have heard there may have been a scorpion.
Throwing them under a bicycle. God.
So those people will benefit, I'm sure.
Beware the scorpion sting.
Yeah.
That's what you call it, is it? Okay. All right. We'll do anything to win. That's fair enough. And look, and speaking of the swim, let's move on to the men, because there was plenty of controversy in the men's stage one swim. It's been well documented. Matt Hauser was penalised pretty severely. In fact, it's the most severe penalty in Super League for a false start. He has to wait for 5 seconds after the last person passes him, and he came out of the water second, it turned out in the end, because it was Jamie Riddle that did the false start, but Matt Hauser was penalised for it, which obviously is a situation we don't want happening ever. But Matt Hauser, and let's just follow this thread through, he was gone for me. He was last. By the end of stage one, he managed to get back to only 12 seconds behind, and then that entire gap was evaporated in that second stage swim. Now, like, he was gone for all money. I remember saying in the commentary, if he finishes in the top 5, it'll be a miracle. He ended up finishing second, and I think really laid down a mark. After the anger and frustration went away, I think he's taking a lot of confidence from being able to do what he did, given the circumstances under which he found himself. We'll get everyone's thoughts on this. Macca, we'll start with you. I mean, Matty Hauser was just... He was angry, and then the frustration ran out halfway through stage 3. He got ran down, but what a performance.
Look, we were heartbroken. I think, you saw the frustration when Michael Thompson, the technical director, held him down there. He was like, it wasn't me. We saw that frustration. And as you said, I thought it was game over. In Super League racing, you can't give up 5 seconds. But it shows the form he is in. He marched his way through that second stage. That second swim, I think, I was going back and looking at some of the old videos, would have to be the best second swim we've ever seen in the second stage with the last swim. I remember a similar one in Hamilton Island by the young Slovenian. What's his name? I can't remember. But great swimmer. He used to swim with Alistair. He had a great second swim to win that stage. Varga. Yes, Varga. That was the best outside of Varga's performance in Hamilton Island I've yet to see. It was amazing. Matt Hauser's race there was incredible. It put him back in the race. And I think...
That was a Benji Sampson swim, Macca. Benji Sampson.
It really was. It really was. But across the board, he biked well. He ran well. He's really come of age as an athlete. And this distance and this style of racing really suits Matt. In my opinion, he's the form athlete of the series. And he's well in front of the others. I know we see Hayden winning this thing, but I think as Vicky said, come enduro time this weekend, with him able to be at the front from the onset for the performance he does in the swim, he's going to be very, very difficult to unleash. And that second and third swims this week in Munich are going to put him right in the box seat to take the title this weekend.
Oh, I mean, this weekend, from talk about turning disaster into success, that is how you do it. The maturity he raced up once it had happened, he could have done one of two things: thrown his toys out the pram, or execute, as Macca said, one of the best put together Super League triple mixes we have ever seen. And that is what he did. He fell short at the end, but to come from being held from the end of the swim plus 5 seconds, I mean, that's like a 25-second hold. Can you imagine in a Super League, everyone's starting and you've got to stand on the pontoon for 25 seconds and then to finish second? It is unheard of. I think as an athlete, he's taken massive confidence. I think the Scorpions messed up big time. and I'll tell you why, and you can't go changing this, is they've signed on I've forgotten his name now.
You've
my
got
big
this massive call on this. You've forgotten.
Oh no, I forgot. His name's gone. Ryan Fisher. You signed on Ryan Fisher. He is one of Matty Hauser's best friend, and I think just the synergy they have is so great to see them. They're a hell of a long way from home, and I just think he's a lot more calm. He's got his girlfriend, his partner with him as well. Both of them have. They're traveling around. They're very chilled. So yeah, I really appreciate that, Macca. But Matty Hauser, he did what Matty Hauser does best, and I'm really excited. I think this weekend we'll talk about in a minute, but this weekend coming up in Munich, there's going to be a lot of tactics. But yeah, just talking about Matty Hauser, man, I couldn't be more happy for himself how he turned that around.
What about you, Vix? What did you think? Because I was trying to convince Annie the other day that Hauser's definitely the favourite for this series now, and she's like, no, it's still the Falcon. I mean, and fair enough, Hayden won the thing. What do you think? Where do you fall?
Okay, well, to quickly go back over Hauser, there's a couple of things I'd like to add, because Tim, I remember you saying to me when we first found out for sure that it wasn't Matt Hauser who'd done the flyer at the start of the race. I mean, understandably, you were frothing, and I think I would have been too if I was his team manager. I think your words were, his whole series has been ruined. And I think that was kind of how we felt about it, right? Like something like that can really ruin the whole race, not just the race, the whole series where he could lie. So the fact that he did what he did and did it with such maturity, exactly as you said, Tim, he had two options. He could have thrown the towel in, lost his head, or just keep his head down. And what he did so well. I mean, on that first bike, he held the back of the main pack the whole time and even gained a little bit on them on the last lap and then ran half of them down on the run. That was unbelievable. Even at the end of round one, he put himself in not a disastrous position. Like, that was super impressive. And just to very quickly touch on the officials, I feel like they get a hard rap, and I know why, because we rely on them to do such an important job. Like, the races don't go ahead without them. But they get a bit of a hard gig, don't they? Because we don't really give them maybe the credit that they deserve or that they're due most of the time. And then something goes wrong and we all pile in. And it makes sense, that was a disaster move for Matt Hauser and the Eagles. Of course it was. But as a general rule, they do a fantastic job. So just wanted to give a little shout out to the poor officials who are probably sat in a dark corner somewhere now, rocking backwards and forwards and hoping that it doesn't happen again. Yeah. But going forward, this weekend and for the rest of the series, I do think Hauser is going to push Hayden. I think it's going to be those two all the way. I don't see anyone else getting super close to them. Not from the form we saw this weekend. Yes, things change. One thing worth noting for me was the very last athlete out the water on swim 1 was Hayden Wilde. So Hayden was the 20th out of 20 athletes out the water. Now, Hayden's been swimming really well recently. He was brilliant at the Commonwealth Games. He's had some cracking swims. His swim has improved, but that was a really bad swim for him. He then got away with that because he bikes and runs so well. But
and
had
Matt
Hauser
wasn't at the front pushing it. Yeah.
Exactly. Had Matt Hauser not had the incident that he had, would Hayden have been able to get back up to him? And that's where this enduro is going to be really interesting, because it's going to end up being Matt Hauser's swim strength versus can Hayden then get himself back in the race with his bike strength. And I think that's going to be the battle all day long when we come to Munich.
Yeah, obviously we are without Alex Yee, so that changes things somewhat as well. But we did have the Commonwealth Games podium at the front, which is exactly how we expected it to play out. Now, there has been a little bit of controversy around the swim because Chase McQueen felt like he deserved to be in the swim points, given that Jamie Riddle needed to be, who was the one who did the false start, we haven't mentioned his name yet, was meant to be disqualified, which he has since been disqualified from the swim points. But Jamie Riddle's second swim was the third fastest swim of the day. So that means...
Not surprised, just saying.
Well, you might not be surprised, but I can tell you Chase McQueen, very surprised and did not believe it was possible.
Well, Chase McQueen needs to go away with Michelle and do his homework. That's all I'm saying.
Ooh.
Yeah, there's a bit of not a heated discussion, but a spirited exchange of ideas, let's call it, around this.
The Eagles are all over the Sharks. It's as simple as that. I mean, we've got Maddie Hauser and Jamie Riddle first and third, and we got the Sharks second and fourth in the swim preems because obviously Hayden. My names are terrible today. Taylor Reeder's jumped up there. But you've got to remember, my boys are looking after my boys while those boys are off the front going hard and they're leaving their team captain, Hayden Wilde, off the back. So I think they've got to stop swimming. You know, I totally agree with Vicky. It's not so much Matty against Hayden. It is the teams against the teams. I mean, we would have had 3 Eagles in the lead group if Maddie Hauser hadn't got the penalty. But obviously then we wouldn't have had Jamie Riddle. But the Sharks did not have their main guy. And as Vicky said, he was chasing. And so they really need to be careful next week that they don't alienate their contender because that you can't reset after 3 swim, bike, run. It is go again. And say he catches them at the end of the run, they're going to dive in and the Eagles are just going to, you can't really fly in the swim, but they're just going to be all over the Sharks again.
So you're telling your Eagles boys to look after Matt and to see Matt through at any point that he needs to be, basically on the ride and run if Hayden's there, or what are you telling them?
I don't think look after, but I think the endurer, you definitely got to race your own race. But you know, when you get the rests, we can reset, and we did have, if certain things happen, the short shoot was going to certain people. But in this race, it's the fluidity. They just got to do what they did last weekend. They've got to commit to it. I mean, Emilio Holmes, he got the short shoot out of nowhere. No one saw that coming. He's technically so proficient on the bike. I mean, I saw you guys. He was on the edge taking those corners. That's the commitment they need. And I think sometimes the guys, Alistair, he's got to get some of his guys up the front. Sharga, he's got to start looking out for Jonathan as well, not Alistair, sorry. And Baxter's got to start. Sharga. He's from Israel.
Chacha Sagiv.
Sagir.
Tim, you're on the mad today, aren't you?
I've had too many espressos today.
Alistair, Johnny, you mean?
Oh my days! I give
up. It was a hard weekend. It was a hard weekend.
I'll be talking about I'll be talking about the elephants and the tigers.
Before we move on from the swim, because there's so much argument now between. I mean, Matty Hauser doesn't care; he's at the front now. Riddle, whether he's disqualified or not, Chase reckons he's better than that. Taylor's in there as well. At some point, we need to settle this who's the quickest swimmer scenario.
I say we do a swim skins. We put some money on the line and we let the boys go mano a mano, open water, one of the events.
Yeah, I think so. Because there's there to be a little bit of.
You can also do that. It's one thing to be the fastest, but to be the fastest swimmer, you need to get through the hustle and bustle of the start. So having these time trials doesn't work. In my opinion, Matt Hauser is the best swimmer in the field at this moment. There's no question about it, and Chase, McQueen and Oliver are probably technically just as fast, but shows pontoon position matters, where you start, getting off the blocks matters, and if you get caught up and don't get around that first buoy, then you can be the fastest swimmer. You get caught up with the other athletes, you're not getting through. So Super League is about timing that start, nailing it and getting off the block super quick, getting around that first buoy with clear water, and then having the ability to maintain the pace. And Matt Hauser, the size of athlete he is, and his reaction pace, which gave him a false start, is what's the difference.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And there's no question that they're the top boys at the moment. Hauser took the swim points from Reed, and then Riddle, obviously we talked about. In the bike, Alex Yee was faster, so he picked up both points for the Rhinos. Obviously, we're not going to see him again. But then it was Hauser Wilde in the bike and Wilde Hauser in the run. So there's a clear delineation between the guys that are chasing at the front and the rest. And the rest, I suppose, are led by Tyler Mislachuk and Johnny Brownlee. And Tyler obviously it's lovely to see him back in form. He's had COVID 3 times. He's had personal things going on. He's had injury. He said I'm back, and he was, which was great for the Scorpions. And then I guess the other part of that question or that statement is that have we seen Johnny Brownlee's best? Because, he was 5th. He was there or thereabouts. I think he's going to have to get better as we go along. His swim, by his own admission, with his elbow and wrist is not the greatest. but it hasn't been that long since it happened. So, I mean, Tim, starting with you, I mean, what do you think about, first of all, Tyler's return to form, and then Johnny rounds out the top 5?
Oh, it's brilliant to see Tyler back. I mean, I was in Tokyo at the Olympic test event, and that was like that was a championship race. It really was, and he delivered. To come here, I mean, in Commonwealth Games, he had a mechanical at the bike, so we didn't get to see him perform. He had to stop on the bike. So it's all very well saying that you're in that shape, but to actually execute it, the worst place to try and do that is on the Super League stage, because it is so unforgiving. And he did it. There is so much more for him to come. Johnny's going to grow into this series. He is the experienced athlete. Now Vince isn't here for these races. He'll be really looking forward to the Endura. He's a real strength-based athlete. He's got that. He knows that first run. He's got to hang on. So when he dives in the swim, he's ahead of Maddie Hauser. So maybe the two of them can form a breakaway. Maybe the other athlete we're not talking about, and I really felt for him at the weekend, is Vasco. Last year, he finished 4th in the series. He was walking to rack his bike, and there was brake fluid leaking all the way from his bike. So Georgia Taylor-Brown stepped up and lent him her bike. And in England, we have the rear brake is our left. Well, in Europe, it's the rear brake is your right. So Vasco raced on a bike he'd never ridden on, in a position he'd never ridden on, with brakes the wrong way round. He was totally on the back foot. So, and they are on the short shoot as well. The Rhinos with Sergio Baxter up there as well. It'll be interesting to see. I think the podium's open, but I think fighting for the top spot is going to be the Hayden and Maddie Hauser show.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. But yeah, I can't, that bike swap, he didn't even have time to change the positioning of the bike at all. So he was riding in essentially George's position, which, I mean, Vix, that's ridiculous.
It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. Georgia said to me afterwards, she said, I can't believe that the saddle even is in the same position. Like, nothing had been moved on her bike at all. So to try and race at that level, at that intensity, on a bike that doesn't fit you, has not been fit around you, is bonkers. And as you touched on that, I hadn't even thought about the brakes, Tim, the fact that they'd have been back to front. And anybody who knows how hard you have to pull on some of those corners, that's not great when they're the wrong way around and you haven't kind of had time to practice that. So super impressive from Vasco there. And not the day that he probably would have been dreaming of for London, but I think we're going to see him back. I think he's in good enough shape. And his teammate Sergio, they are on the same team, aren't they? They're both Rhinos.
Yeah.
Sergio, I think, is the breakout star. Yeah, not you, Tim. I think he's the breakout star of this year, let alone coming to Super League. He's been fantastic so far this season. Young Spanish lad who's really improved. He's won a World Cup this year already. His trajectory is absolutely skyrocketing at the moment. And to deliver how he did in London in the sprint finish with Tyler and Johnny coming in just behind Johnny, I thought was super impressive. And I think we're going to see really good things from him.
Yeah, that's a huge confidence boost. I think when Vasco's bike was he suddenly realised it wasn't working, they couldn't fix it in time. He just grabbed the closest bike, and it turned out to be George's. And he yelled out to Georgia, "Hey, can I use your bike?" And I think Georgia was like, just saying, "Yeah, thanks, I had a great race." Didn't hear what he said. So it's like, that's good enough. That's good enough. I'm taking it.
I think he said something to Georgia. Did say he said something to her along the lines of "Thanks for the bike," and she went, "Eh." She's like, "Oh, okay, right, that's happening then." And Georgia being Georgia, she's absolutely fine about it.
That's fantastic. All right. Obviously,
one thing we haven't talked about at all is Hayden Wilde.
Yeah, well, it seems like everything's revolving around him, right? So we don't have to. We just go, Hayden won, let's think about who can beat him, but we haven't talked about, how good he is.
That was such a mature performance. He messaged me this morning, and I messaged him last night saying I watched it, and I haven't seen him race like that ever. He wasn't chest out on the front trying to be the fastest. He was racing tactically, and he's never done that before. And even he said, "Oh, I should maybe race like that more often." And I'm like, "No, don't bother, mate." When it came to the corners on the run, he was first into the dead turn, first out. He couldn't control the acceleration. When it came to that last swim, as he schooled Maddie Hauser. He got in the water first. Maddie Hauser got alongside him. He got in the pocket on his hip and he slowed him down. He didn't care how slow they swam. He was not going to sit on the feet because there's a chance of the elastic. He got in there and he was a disruptor. He took the inside line on both those boys. That wasn't by chance or luck. He knew what he had to do to stay in the game. And yeah, if he changes his style of racing from going as hard as he can for as long as he can and thinking no one's going to have the balls to go with him, if he races like that, it's going to be hard for Maddie to beat him. It really is. But yeah, a tip of the hat to Hayden, because Macca and I both said that we thought Alex Yee was going to school him, and man, I think we've both eaten our hats.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? Macca, what did you think of that too? The one thing he didn't know was that Maddie had the short chute. So he thought he had him in the pocket there, so he didn't realise that. So he still had enough to dig deep and come over the top of him, and well in the end.
Yeah, look, Hayden always has that incredible bike skills, coming from that mountain bike background in New Zealand. We've seen it his whole time in Super League racing. His skills are impeccable and his ability to move through groups is amazing. So he has that trump card up his hand. But I agree with Tim that the experience showed in that last swim where he got right on Matty Hauser's hip and dragged him back like a pair of board shorts. After losing 10 seconds to him in the swim before. Actually, more than 10 seconds in the stage 2 swim. So that was fantastic racing, and I think he's building into the athlete that he is. We know he's an Olympic bronze medalist. He's a Commonwealth Games silver medalist. He's leading the world rankings at the moment. He's really becoming and racing like the athlete that the results show. And in the past, we've always talked about the inexperience of Hayden Wilde. That's done. He's a player now, and he's racing as such. And he is the one, as you said. All the team managers are looking to oust Hayden Wilde and to isolate him, and that's going to be the discussions this week. And it'll be interesting to see what tactics go into this week's racing to dislodge him, because if left to his own devices, he'll be very, very difficult to beat.
One thing that I like about Hayden is that he's I guess he's gotten the maturity now to just be exactly who he is. So after the race, he went and bought like this huge box of Lego, right, and brought it with him on the plane, and he's been sitting in Munich building a Lego Land Cruiser. Like, you got to be confident in who you are if you're going to go and buy Lego. And I just like to build Lego, so screw everybody else. And then he's been sending me photos. I've just finished the engine on the Land Cruiser. Check it out. Like, this is what he's been doing here in Munich, which is completely weird. But I appreciate the fact that he's got the confidence to just be exactly who he is now. And if he wants to build Lego as a 22-year-old man, you know what, he can. That's exactly it.
He's only 22. Oh, my God.
24, isn't he?
I don't know. 20. Like, once you get to 40, everyone looks the same age, man. I'm just assuming he's 22 because they all are.
True.
All right, let's go. Let's finish up with some predictions. Let's see our podiums for the Enduro in Munich coming up this weekend. All the details, of course, to see it is at superleaguetriathlon.com in your specific country, or, of course, on YouTube as well. So, Bix, let's start with you. Who wins the women's? Who's the podium? Who's the men's podium?
Oh, okay. Women, I think Cassandra's probably going to do the business again. I think Georgia and Taylor are going to be really hard to look beyond. As a little bit of a wild card, I think Beth will be better this week than she was last week. So we could see her back up there too. And I think on the men's side, I think Matty might have enough. I think if he plays his swim card correctly, I think he might just about have enough to hold off Hayden. So I'll go Matty, Hayden, and then I'm going to elevate Johnny up to third.
Okay. Macca, what do you think?
Oh, I concur with everything Vicky said. I think Matty Hauser's on the men's side. He's going to go in very, very angry. On the women's side, I think Georgia's going to come over the top of Taylor Spivey, but I think Taylor will be on the podium again, and Cassandre is the woman to beat. She loves the enduro format. I think she's shown the form, and she'll be the woman to beat overall.
Have you got anything at all, Tim, to say that's different to that? Because I got to, not that anyone cares what I think, but I pretty much agree with those two, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I've got a few things. I think, Cassandre might get beaten because remember, you got that crazy run, and she's not good at transitions. You got that crazy run from the transition down that slope, the Matty Hauser steps. But I think, in the second swim, Cassandre, Taylor, and Georgia are going to check out. and that's going to be a fight between the three of them. Yeah, you would put it on Cassandre, but it could be the smaller things could make a big difference. On the men, yeah, I think again that the first run and second swim, Maddie's got to go with people. So if Tyler Michalchuk, he swims well, if he has a good start, I can see, it'd be Hayden. I can see it being Matty, Tyler Michalchuk, and Jonathan Brownlee on the podium, unless Hayden Wilde can. If he starts the second swim with them, he'll sit there because, as Mac has said, he's so good at slowing people down. But if he's not on that group, he's not going to get on the podium. Just to throw cat amongst the pigeons.
Well, Johnny was so good there last year, but it was a completely different format. I want to put Vasco in the top three. I don't know. I mean, we don't know where he's at, but I'd love to see him. Considering what he did with that other bike, and I think Kenji's come good. Kenji's a smart pick from you, Macca.
Yeah. Well, he's a consistent.
Well,
he's a consistent.
He threw up mid-race.
Yeah, it was a
Kenji's
good
sick.
run.
It was really good. They had to wash the carpet mid-race. I was watching them going, what are they doing? Oh, no.
So he's had a virus like 4 weeks ago, and now every time he's at his absolute limit, he vomits all the time, and it didn't used to happen. He has a gag reflex when he's when he's in zone 5, he just spews. So I'm like, welcome to the family, mate. But that's the situation.
So Super League, you never have to go hard in Super League, so he'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah. So apart from the fact that he spews every time he works hard, I just think he's getting better and better and becoming more and more of a feature in the top 6. Kenji Nina just getting better as time goes on. Anyway, we've run out of time. Thank you very much, everyone, for your efforts. I am in Munich already. I will see all of you very, very soon, and we'll do it all again. Thank you for your time.
Cheers, gang.
Thank you.